Okay, good morning. So we're working through Siman Shin Yudala, the halachas of binyan stira b'kelim, and what we're going to do today is the big question of opening bottle tops on Shabbos. We're going to discuss metal tops and plastic tops, the old chestnut, the old issue. Well, that will be towards the end of the share. So Seif base, we're Shin Yudala Seif base. Hoya bon nekev v'nistam. If there was a hole in the barrel, let's say, v'nistam, and then it was sealed up, imu lamatzam in ashmarim, if it was below where the content of the barrel is, also leposcha, you can't open it. To kivin shu lamatza, since it's lower down where the food and the shmarim, the conserves are, the kolkovet hayayin olav, the whole weight of the wine is a barrel of wine, the whole weight of the wine is on it. So tzorich stimus me'alya, then clearly the seal must have been a very effective one. And if you're going to open up that hole, then it's considered a new opening, and therefore it's a problem. However, if it was above the level of the shmarim, of the sediments in the barrel, then mutar leposcha, then it would be okay to open it, because you're just reopening a hole that was there previously. It says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Katan Yud Gimel, nekev v'nistam, afilu haya oisa Mokam habarza, even if it was where the tap was, the plug was, shesosmo, which was sealed up, mokam acher, and now you want to reopen that hole, so it depends where it is. V'choshiv k'peseach mechodosh, v'alkein also lasis sham afilu nekev koton, she'ein also lahachnis v'lahitzi ad yodei. So if you're reopening that hole, if it's below the shmarim level, then clearly it was sealed well, and therefore you're opening a new hole, and therefore you've got a problem. He says in 14, to reopen that previously sealed hole is an issa drabonon. Even if it was well sort of sealed up again, reopening it is only a drabonon. It's like opening a tap. It's just a chazal forbade it if it's below the shmarm where the sediment is. But if it's above, then mutar lefascha. He says Mishnah Berurah Tesvav, afilu hu nekev gadol, even if it's a large hole, because it was never considered properly sealed up, and therefore you're not doing anything really. Okay, Gimel. B'makom nekev yoshon, in the place where you've got the old opening, the old hole, noikvin afilu b'mekadeach, and therefore you're allowed to open it. You can even open it with a drill, pirish kli miyuchad linkov, a kli which is miyuchad to make a hole. Kagoyin shenishbara habarza, for example, the tap breaks. Others say you're only allowed to do it if the barrel is made out of clay, of earthenware, where the steamer wasn't very sort of firm. But if it's made out of wood, where it's sort of tightly squashed together, which sealed up the nekev, then that would clearly be a new hole, and that would be a problem. Okay, it says Mishnah Berurah Tezayin, b'makom nekev yoshen, bein shanekev hahu hoya gadol koton, whether the hole was big or small, bilvad shelo yarchiva yosem mima shehoya mitchila. So long as you're allowed to reopen that previously sealed hole, but you can't make it wider, because making it wider is making a new nekev effectively. And when you're allowed to do it, you can even use a drill to do it, i.e. not an electric drill, right? Just an implement which is allowed. Because it wasn't properly sealed up, because it was above the shmarim, like we said in the previous sif. Which he says there is a pekak shel sha'am, some sort of, the cork. Afil bekli ha'mesuken lekach. Okay, habarza nokat dova ha'hoiver v'adinim hoya nekev b'makom asher achar shenistam. That's just the norm. The norm would be where you reopen it where the tap used to be. V'yesh ovim d'lo shari. Zui dash hadas ha'kolboy. This is the shit of the kolboy. V'ayim beli rabbi shekosov d'shar poiskim pligi al zeh v'pasak kamoisom. So machlik is achronim whether we pass like the first shit of the mechaber, that you're allowed to reopen it, or like the Eishomrim. Okay, so different opinions if you're reopening a previously sealed hole. Okay, Dalit. Says the Mechaba, there's no Mishnah Berurah on this sif. Barza shebechovis, a stopper, the tap on the chovis, you can't open it up, you can't take it out. Imagine like a cork, which is in the barrel on the side and you can't take it out. You can take another sort of cork just to push it out. Because if it's neged the shmarim, then that's considered a proper seal, and effectively you're opening a barrel, you're fashioning a hole in a barrel, which is not allowed. Okay, hey. Mutter litein kona cholul b'chovis o barza. You're allowed to take a straw and to put it into a barrel, a barza, all through the stopper, lohetzi yain, afal pisha lo hoy ba ma'ilam. Even though there was never a straw there, aval litein alo shel hadas b'nekev shebechovis. But to take a leaf, a myrtle leaf, a hadas leaf, she'ola also kamarzev, and you're sort of fashioning a spout from the leaf, v'hayayin zov derech sham, and the wine will just flow out through this newly fashioned spout that you've made through a hadas leaf, very creative. That's not allowed. The gazrin and shelo yisakin marzev liyenoi. Chazal made the gezerah that you shouldn't make a spout for your wine, sheyipol hayayin leteicha v'yelech merachik, that it can sort of flow to a distance. Kashelakech ha'ola makafloi kein marzev nira ka'isa marzev. And therefore, when you're taking this leaf and you're folding it, it looks like you're making some sort of spout, and therefore that's not allowed. And it's not the same of putting like a straw there, because that's not a proper spout. You're not doing a proper maisa, and that would be okay. But the spout is not allowed. Now, there are those who say that if you've got lots of leaves which are already detached, you're allowed to, because we're not worried shemiyikdom more, because you've already got lots of leaves which are detached. Now what's going on over here is very interesting, that again, without the background you wouldn't really know this, but what the Mechaba and the Ramah are arguing about is actually Machlikas Amoraim, the Gemara. What is the reason you can't make a spout on Shabbos? So one mandama says because it's a proper tikkun kli, you're sort of you're fashioning an opening of a spout on Shabbos, and the other Amira says no. The problem is shemiyiktem. You might take a leaf or pull it off a tree and fashion a spout. But what's the nafkamina? The nafkamina would be if you've already got leaves which are ketumim, which are already detached. That would be nafkamina, and therefore the Ramah is going like those Rishonim who say the problem is only shemiyiktem. But if you've got ketumim, then it's okay. But the Mechaba is going like the first opinion. So that's what's going to come out in the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotzon Chof. Shahari Oimid Mutter Litein. So you're allowed to put a straw in an existing hole. Shahari Oimid Miyuchad Lekach, because it was there for it. For Eina Masukim Kli, you're not doing anything. You're just putting a straw in an existing hole. You can't put that straw in, firmly fix it in. There's a problem of tikkun mana. Afal pi, shafal gav she'en yodeh im yagil midasei. Afilu hachi muta. V'ayim bebeis Yosef shekosef shenir medivrei Rambam shafal pi shehakona atzma eina musukenes kol torka v'chaser shum tikkun. It's not sort of properly finished off. Afilu hachi muta lachnisa v'lei chashin shem yisakneh. We're not worried you might fix it in more properly. Now, b'makom sheyesh le da. The problem is that you're making a marzev. It looks like you're making a marzev, which is problems of tikkun mana and things like that. Who plucks the damiroi b'gemara? Like I was just explaining, this is a machlekes amiroim in the Gemara. One problem of using a leaf as a spout is yaseh marzev. You're making a spout, and that's gemara melacha, tikkun mana, etc. You might pull off a leaf. What's the nafkamina between these two shittahs? The kotim umanchi, i.e., you've already got lots of leaves already cut off, already detached. So also it's still prohibited. Af b'chiyah gavna. Omar shemiyikdem shari. The Rosh and the Tur paskin like the mandam of Shemi Yigdaim, and the Ramah follows that shitta. Okay, so if you ever need some sort of spout, the Ramah would allow you to use a leaf if they're already detached from the tree to use as the spout. Okay, Vov. Now Vov is going to be very relevant to Halacha L'Maisa. This is going to be the shaila of opening bottle tops on Shabbos. So you've got a bottle of Coke, or you've got a grape juice bottle, and we're going to make a distinction between plastic and metal tops. We'll see that in the footnotes in the famous shita of Shlomo Zalman. Okay, Vov, here we go. Mutar lahatiz reish hachovis b'saif. So this is a Gemara that you're allowed to chop off the top of a barrel with a knife. The lav lepesach mechaven. You're not really making a fashioning and opening, because you're just chopping, sort of lopping off the whole top of the barrel. But to make a hole in the side, bein shel chovis, bein shel megufo, whether it's in a barrel or some sort of megufo is like a flask, I think, then that would not be allowed. Osa. Even if you're making a big hole with a spear or something, and it's not and it's not like a proper opening, still it's not allowed to kiven to have a mitzvah, since it's on the side vaday lepesach mechaven. Clearly you're fashioning an opening. To make a hole in the top of the barrel, that would be allowed. The lav lepesach mechaven, because you're not intending to make an opening. The way to open a barrel is to cut off the top of the barrel. You don't make an opening there. If you want to make an opening in the barrel, you make openings in the side. So therefore, what comes out from the mechaber is you're allowed to take a knife or a sword or something and just cut off the top of the barrel. That's not considered opening. It's just like opening a barrel. That's not fashioning an opening. But to make a hole on the side is problematic of tikkun mona. But on the top, making a hole, that would seem to be okay. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Mutar lahatziz. Now, why is that allowed? To ein binyan v'stira b'kelim, because like we started yesterday, we pasken ein binyan v'stira b'kelim. Umayri b'chovis gerua. We're talking again, as we explained in Sif Aleph, a weak sort of bad, poor quality chovis shemedubak shvorea b'zefes, where the sort of the pieces have been stuck together with pitch. V'loy b'shleima, not a proper barrel. Like we explained in Sif Aleph. But if you want to chop off just the top of the barrel, even in a proper chovis, that would be allowed. Because that's not it's not properly mechuberes to the chovis, and therefore it's not considered shvira, it's not proper binyan v'stira b'kelim, and therefore chopping off the top of the barrel would be okay. And why with a saif? To klisha melachta le'issa mutar l'taltal l'tzorech gufay, because you're allowed to take a knife, or you can take your hammer to crack the nut, because you're allowed to take a klisha melachta le'issa l'tzorech gufay. Now let's have a look at 20. Upekak mateches ha'osu kein kese al gabi bakbuk. So this is hamotz bakbuk be'ibira. So can you picture a bottle of beer? So you've got the bottled cap on the beer, the metal cap on the bottle of beer. Kosova chazan ish shemutala sirma bakbuk. So to open a bottle of beer, just to flip open, some people are very good at it and they can do it, little party tricks, and they can open the cap of the bottle very easily. But ordinarily, you just use an implement for that. So it says the Chazon Ish, you're allowed to remove it. Now the reality is, when you open that top of the beer cap, when you open the beer bottle, not the bottle, the glass bottle, then you're going to bend the actual cap. So ein bekach mishum issa soiser. Says the Chazon Ish, there's no problem of soiser. You're not demolishing this cap. It's the same as this sif of a barrel of wine or whatever it is, where you're cutting open the top. No one's worried about an issa stira of this barrel. So just like Arsif says, you can cut off the top of the barrel, and that's not a problem if it's a sosa. Says the Chazon Ish, you can also open the cap. You can flip open and bend even the cap of the glass bottle of beer, and we're not worried about sosa. And then if you jump down a few lines at the end of this paragraph, the last sentence, for kosav tam noisef lekach she'en beikum zeh mishum issa sosa she'misha shehid kues apkak ala bagbuk botlam menatoras kli. When you take the metal cap and you sort of, in the factory, it's squashed down onto the top of the bottle. It's lost its din of a kli. It's no longer got a shame kli. And therefore, it's standing there to be bent when it's opened. And then he gives other reasons as well. So, Bekitza, opening a bottle of beer by taking the top off is no problem. Now, if
it would be worse if it's one of these.
We're going to come to that in a second. Let's just do we're coming to that now. So look at the top of the next column. Or pakak havroga also mateches. So imagine a grape juice bottle where it's got a metal top, which is what you just described. She'em psichos nifrad mimenu chelko hatachtoin v'niser she'en ke'en tabas al tzavar bakbuk. So imagine when you open it and you've left with a metal ring at the top of the bottle, and you've now created essentially a new little kli with the top of that bottle. It's a very small metal kli, if you think about it. A bottle of wine or grape juice. So opening a metal bottle of wine or grape juice would be a problem, because that top is essentially, you're making it into a kli, which could be used, for something. Because till now it was sealed there was a closed seal on the bottle. You couldn't use it for anything else. Therefore, you've made a kli on Shabbos. Okay, so that is a now. What is the solution? If you've got a bottle of grape juice, it happens the whole time. If you haven't, the best thing to do is the Shmir Shabbos says at the beginning of his chapter on Kalim and all of these things, is just open everything before Shabbos. But Lamaisa, sometimes we forget. So what's the aid? So if you jump to the next paragraph, if you open it, you stab it with a sharp knife, and be careful how you do it. Das hagon shlem zamen Orach in Shmir Shabbos shekiven shenikiv es hapkak shuv ein regin nishtamish by ve'em pesazor mishum yitziras kli. That's exactly the point. Because if you've got a bottle and you pierce it at the top, and then you open it, well, you have made a kli because it's not functional. You've got a hole at the bottom of your kli. That's the svara of why you're doing it.
Sorry, you make a hole in the cap.
Yeah.
What do you mean you've got a hole in
The kli, the whole problem over here is if you've got a bottle of wine or grape juice and you're opening it, by you opening it, you have made a little kli. But if you first pierce the top, then it's not a kli. Because when you open it, you haven't made a kli, because what you're going to put in there is going to just fall out. If you want to keep olive oil in there, for example, the actual kli itself is dysfunction. It's always the cap. The whole problem is the cap, not the bottle. The bottle was a kli beforehand. The problem is by opening the top, you have fashioned a kli in the top of the bottle that you just opened, in that metal thing. And therefore, by you piercing a hole in it, you haven't made a kli. That's the lomdus of it, right? Now, then, what about a bottle of Coke? So if you jump to the next paragraph, or pekak havroga also with plastic. Yeah, if you've got a bottle of Coke or whatever, that's allowed to open it. Okay, I'm going to forget, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the svara is very kishmak. The svara is, because how do they make it in the factory? They've made this as a kli beforehand, and then they put it onto it. So it was already a kli. You haven't made a kli. Masha'enke, in the metal ones, it's just a sheet of metal, and I've seen pictures of this. It goes along the conveyor belt, and then a machine comes down on the metal ones, and it just fashions it around it. So it wasn't a kli beforehand, and then it's just sealed around the top of the bottle, and then when you open it, you've made it into a kli. That's the problem. But with the plastic ones, it was already made as a plastic top. It had a shem kli, and you're not making a new kli, you're just opening it. Now there are those who asa the plastic. He brings it in the end of the footnote. Rabbi Yashiv, Rabbi Nissim Karelitz, but Rabbi Shlomo Zalman makes that distinction, and that's why you'll find a lot of people, they won't open a metal bottle top, but they will open a plastic one. By the way, I've seen, there was an Adam Gadol who is no longer alive, but he would be here in this town, London, and I saw him open a kli, and I remember what he did was, I watched him at a kiddush, I could see the whole olim there, he was about to make kiddush, and he had a bottle of grape juice or whatever it was, or wine, and he opened the kli and he just chucked it away. So that's another eight I've seen people do, because, don't tell me you're making a kli, literally as he opens it, he just chucked it on the floor, because he was doing it to say that I'm not making a kli, this is not important for me. So what emerges is opening bottles on Shabbos. According to Shlomo Zalman, his famous mahalach, there's a distinction between metal bottle caps and plastic ones. Metal bottle ones are a problem because you're making a kli. The actual cap is a kli, but the plastic is okay because it was a kli beforehand. The eitzah for the metal ones is, of course, to open it before Shabbos. If you pierce a hole, then you haven't made a kli, because when you open it, it's a dysfunctional thing. Let's just finish off the Mishnah Berurah till there. We're up to Chaf Hei. Delav lePesach mechaven. El laharchiv moitzes faser sheyuchel. So what is going on? This is going on. Chaf Hei. Mutar lahatziz rosh hachovis b'sayif. Delav lePesach mechaven. When you chop off the top of the barrel, you're not already making a Pesach. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chaf Hei. El laharchiv moitzes faser sheyuchel b'kal likach meshe b'seicha. You're just making it easy to extract what's in the barrel. V'davka k'sho oisezeh mipnei ha'orchim. And dafka, but you're doing it in front of guests. Umuta gamken ikra ha'er me'al pi ha'chovesh shel yain u'bevat shlei chaven asos zinoik pirush ke'im marzev. Make sure you don't make a spout out of it. So you just chop the top of the barrel off. You see in 21, he says, the Tamadovi says, Kosovo chaznish, you're doing it because of guests. Sheboifen zed nika shu matiz reish hachovis kadei laharis ayin yofim b'fnei archim. You're opening a whole new barrel for your guests. V'lo b'shvil lasis ba Pesach. U'memele ein zeh nidain k'Pesach. Okay. But to make a hole in the side, then we said it's a problem. The nekev hari hu ka'isa pesach lechovis, because you're making an opening to the chovis. Va'afilu nekev kotzen she'ena osu lahachnes v'lohitzi. Even if it's a very small hole, gam kein osu midrabanan, bein b'megufa or bein b'chovis, whether it's the plug or whether it's in the barrel itself. Ela yesh chiluk beineim. De'in megufa ena osa ela b'nekev kazeh. If it's in a plug and you're making a hole in the plug, then it's only a problem on the sides. But when you're doing it in the plug at the top of the barrel, but in the barrel itself, also okay, so I wasn't clear before. So when we said chopping off the top of the barrel is allowed, in the side making a hole, that's only allowed in a plug which is already there, and you want to bore a hole in that plug. But if you're boring a hole in the barrel itself, that's for sure not allowed, and certainly not at the top. Okay, and vada lePesach mechaven chav zayin the eina mechaven lePesach laharchiv moitzi yain. If you're broadening the hole to take a wine out, you should have just taken the plug off. But when you make a hole in the plug at the top, because you're not going to make a hole there, because you want things to fall into it. In the side, things won't fall in. Mutter, what's that going on? That's the last line. Is mutter. Afilu b'chovis shleima shari she'ena megufa chibur lechovis v'chanal b'sif kotzen chav kimel mistaber de bezel lekula alma mutter v'afilu shlei b'fnei arachim. Okay, so just to summarize, we've said that opening a barrel on Shabbos by taking a knife or a sword or something and slicing off the top of the barrel, that would be allowed. With regard to making holes, you can't fashion a hole in the side of the barrel or the top of the barrel. But if there was a plug in the side, that would be okay to bore a hole inside that. And regard to bottles and things like that, a glass bottle of beer to flip open and bend the top of the cap, that's no problem. The Chazon Ish and others, In regards to bottle tops, Shlomo Zalman famously makes the chiluk between metal tops and plastic. Metal caps are problematic because you're fashioning a kli. Plastic ones are okay because the kli's already been fashioned. And the metal top, if you didn't open them before Shabbos, then you can pierce a hole in it, according to Shlomo Zalman. Others are machmi even for plastic ones. But the Olim seem to make a lot of Shlomo Zalman, but you see different practices.
What did you say through